My name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas and an expert in the area of personality disorders. And today I wanted to talk about borderline personality disorder and agoraphobia. And I'm going to do a series of videos on anxiety and borderline personality disorder. And today we're going to focus specifically on agoraphobia. But before we do that, let's talk about some general statistics and general information that we have found related to borderline personality disorder and anxiety. Now, what the research currently shows is that 74.2% of all individuals who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder experience or have been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, a comorbid anxiety disorder. And what that means is that these individuals have borderline personality disorder, they've been diagnosed with it, and they have also been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder as well. So they're comorbid, they co-occur, they occur together. And that's 74.2%. Now what the studies don't focus on is what about those individuals who have borderline personality disorder traits? These are people that may not meet the full criteria to qualify for the diagnosis, but they have traits. They have a lot of these same socio-economic dysfunction related to borderline personality disorder issues, issues of abandonment, emptiness, so on and so forth. And I think that that would even be higher than 74.2%. Okay? So let's kind of break that down. Let's look at the numbers as they relate to specific anxiety disorders and borderline personality disorder. Okay? Now remember that before we get into the statistics, that for these research studies, these are folks that qualified for the full disorder. Okay? So we know that it would probably be even higher for those who have borderline personality disorder traits. Okay? So the first is that 36% of individuals with borderline personality disorder also have a comorbid disorder, comorbid condition of panic disorder. Okay? And that panic disorder, because this research was done a while ago, so it was done using the DSM-4, okay? And so it was panic disorder with agoraphobia. Now, they found panic disorder alone was 18.8%. Okay? So it's almost double for those with panic disorder and with agoraphobia. And we're going to talk specifically about agoraphobia today in the DSM-5. It separated panic disorder from agoraphobia because they found that agoraphobia can actually stand on its own, that it is a unique construct outside of panic disorder. Okay? We won't get too deep into that today because that's not what this video is focusing on. Okay? And then for those with borderline personality disorder, 17.5% had a social phobia, and 35.1% had specific phobia. Now, a specific phobia is that you are phobic of something very specific. It could be snakes, spiders, heights, things of that nature. So 35.1% of those with borderline personality disorder have also been found to have a specific phobia. Now, 35.1% of individuals with borderline personality disorder have been found to qualify for generalized anxiety disorder. Now, generalized anxiety disorder, in a nutshell, is that it is anxiety, worry, rumination, associated with a wide variety of things. It's not anything centralized. It could be about how life is going, how things are working, who is doing what, my finances, my life, but it is to such an extent that it causes socio-economic dysfunction. It impairs the individual's ability to connect to others, okay, to go to work, to take care of themselves, to take care of their children. Okay? So it's that generalized anxiety disorder. It's very general. Okay? And then the last part, and which I've done a video on this, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. 39.2% of individuals with borderline personality disorder have been found to qualify for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Now, the video that I did was on complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is slightly different, and I do explain that in the video. Okay? And I'll put a link to that video here in case you're interested in that specifically. So let's talk about agoraphobia and borderline personality disorder, because there is a lot of overlap. There's a lot of connection. These are things that I've certainly seen in some of my clients as well when we talk about agoraphobia. Now, agoraphobia is it's fear of the marketplace. It's fear of going out, right, on your own. So it's a fear or anxiety associated with could be using public transportation, being in open spaces, being in enclosed spaces, standing in line or being in a crowd, or being outside of the home alone. Okay, so it's in essence that you're out or you're in this situation, and it's this loss of control. It's this great sense of doom and fear, and it's this overwhelming anxiety. And that impairs your ability to function within those situations. Well, individuals with borderline personality disorder often feel in these various situations, as we mentioned, that a lot of times they can't handle it. A lot of times they're riddled with a lot of anxiety. A lot of folks with borderline personality disorder have difficulty managing stress, conceptualizing anxiety, certainly the root, management, how best to exit a situation safely and successfully. So all of these factors of agoraphobia can relate to individuals with borderline personality disorder. And as we know, we're looking at 36%. Okay? To go back to our data. Now, for individuals also with agoraphobia is that, so these individuals tend to fear or avoid situations. Okay? Now that's because the thought that escape might be difficult or help might be hard to find. Okay? And if they become overwhelmed, if they feel stuck, if they feel like they can't get out, that can be something that is very overwhelming for these individuals and makes it really hard for them to function. Now, because a number of folks that are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder have experienced trauma, sometimes childhood trauma, this specific aspect, which is that fear of avoiding situations, feeling that you can't escape, is directly relevant to those with borderline personality disorder. So this is another component. Now, we're back to that 36%. It makes sense. A third of those diagnosed with borderline personality disorder experience this as well. Now, agoraphobic situations almost always provoke fear or anxiety. So when you're in that situation, public transportation, open spaces, closed spaces, being in line, being in a crowd, being outside of the home, that this creates great intense anxiety for these folks. And what happens is that individuals with borderline personality disorder, they have this consistency in negative response. And that consistency in negative response is when they feel uncertain, feel unsafe, they go to these negative beliefs, behaviors, and patterns, their default patterns, that tends to be disruptive for themselves, be disruptive for those that may be in that situation with them, or if they're alone, they feel like they just need to get out, just escape from that situation. Is what becomes very overwhelming for them. And the agoraphobic situation, a lot of times, is that for agoraphobia, people that qualify for this anxiety disorder, is that they actively avoid these situations. They work hard to avoid these situations. Now, I've heard from a lot of folks that have borderline personality disorder, who they become shut-ins, to use their term, they become hermits, to use their term, is that they have removed themselves from society at large. They've removed themselves from the society in which they interact. And sometimes they do that because they're afraid of falling back into those old default negative patterns, being disruptive, of hurting themselves or hurting others, or maybe it's a work-related issue, they can't hold a job, whatever it may be. And sometimes what happens is, but in these situations, is that they have an individual that they can engage in these situations with, that they can go and stand in line, they can go to a concert or go into a crowd, or they can use public transportation. And sometimes this individual could be their favorite person. Okay? So, and I also did a video on favorite person as well. I'll put a link for that if you're interested. And what happens is these individuals with borderline personality disorder is that they develop over time this lack of self-efficacy. And this self-efficacy can sometimes build to anxiety, to this point of anxiety where they feel like they can't control themselves, they can't control their situation, and they have all this evidence to say, look, this is why I can't do it. And I'm not lessening that or minimizing that, because a lot of my clients do really experience this, and it's very real for them and certainly understandable. But what I like to do is build their sense of self-efficacy. And we're going to talk about a treatment in just a minute called ACE that I use with a lot of my clients with borderline personality disorder, which are almost 75% of those with borderline personality disorder also have an anxiety disorder issue as well. So anxiety treatment is something that I do quite a lot. We build these skills in anxiety and things like that. But to go back to that lack of self-efficacy is that it's difficult for them to control these situations that they're in, and that kicks up all of this fear and this anxiety. And sometimes, if there's been childhood trauma, it can kick up trauma. So you see that it becomes very, very cyclical for them and overwhelming. And certainly it is also quite understandable for them based upon some of their past experiences. Now, another component of agoraphobia is that the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is persistent, and it has to typically last for 6 months or more. So the question becomes, okay, so as you're watching this, you may be like, oh my gosh, I have agoraphobia, I'm agoraphobic. Hold on a minute, because you need to ask yourself, right? Knowing the issues that you're dealing with is really important, especially if you or someone you love or someone you know has borderline personality disorder. Okay, so is this habitual? Okay, so now for a lot of folks with borderline personality disorder is that you see that a lot of this anxiety, a lot of this avoidance behavior is pretty common for a lot of folks with borderline personality disorder. That's why treatment is so important. That's why learning strategies, management strategies is so important. Okay, to do this, to manage this aspect, of anxiety that is highly paired or often paired with borderline personality disorder. And then the last component of agoraphobia that we're going to talk about, and this is the fear, anxiety, and avoidance, which now this causes real distress, and it causes what's called socio-economic dysfunction, and that's problems in your social life, making money or in school, all right, and it prevents you from living a full and complete life, right? So for those that have borderline personality disorder, these are typically relationships, concepts of self that are often disruptive as to how they're living their life, how they're connecting to people. And agoraphobia, individuals with that they have that same issue, but it's related to the agoraphobia. Now, if you have both, you can kind of get a feel, as we've gone through this, about the intensity that those individuals are experiencing. Is that, and to sort of discern between the two, if you're wondering, so do I fall into this category? Do I have both of these disorders? Do I have this comorbid borderline personality disorder with agoraphobia? Is that, so you'd have to separate the two out. Okay, so if you have anxiety associated with your borderline personality disorder, okay, but maybe it's that fear of going out, that fear of connecting others, is associated more with the emptiness, abandonment, other types of issues, that's borderline personality disorder. When we talk about agoraphobia, these sort of stand alone. These issues are beyond abandonment, beyond mood lability, right? Which is your mood goes up, mood goes down, you're very reactive to situations, you become overwhelmed with your feelings. Uncertainty about self is more of a borderline personality disorder issue, and stress-related paranoia is also more specific to borderline personality disorder than it is agoraphobia. So we want to pull those factors out. Okay? So for them to occur together, they also have to be able to be defined alone as well. And I hope that makes sense, and I understand that it can certainly be confusing. So the borderline personality disorder component exists here, and we certainly have that emptiness and chronic emptiness and abandonment and issues like that, but you also have the agoraphobia as well, which is all that anxiety and being in those new places and not having that favorite person or that specific individual that you can connect with, where you can go out and feel safe and comfortable. So you seclude yourself. So do these occur together? And it is complex. If it sounds confusing, it is confusing to a lot of folks. And sometimes it can be difficult to discern that. So it's important to recognize, so a lot of folks that with anxiety, now medication has been found to be effective for anxiety. A lot of the research for anxiety as well as depression. What that does is that instead of having that range like this, that the medication can cut it down to this where it becomes more manageable. That's the goal of medication, is to lessen the degree of response so that it becomes manageable for you. So those strategies are still beneficial. Those strategies are still helpful for you. And I recently did a video on the ACE anxiety technique. I also have a worksheet associated with that. I'll put the link in the comment section here so you can access that to help you work through it. Very quickly, what the ACE anxiety technique is, it's about A is for acceptance, C is for challenge, and E is for evaluation. And these are strategies, specific things that you can do to challenge that anxiety, to control that anxiety, so that anxiety isn't controlling you. And what happens is, if you can lessen that anxiety, it helps to make some of those borderline issues clearer, right? The less issues you have, the easier it is to control a borderline personality disorder. Easy to say, hard to do, and that's absolutely understandable. But if we can lessen a lot of that interference with the anxiety, we can get to the personality disorder issue and lessen a lot of the core structure issues and a lot of those things that are driving that borderline personality disorder, that's causing a lot of problems for you, that's causing a difficulty in relationships. And we can lessen that and deal with it as best we can. I know I covered a lot in a short amount of time. I hope that you found this useful. Please have any comments or suggestions that you may have. If you liked the video, check out some of my other ones, or you're welcome to subscribe. That would be great. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I hope you found this useful, and have a good day. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.